Coming up on Stowe Nation.
And Steve, did you see the horses coming, or did you just happen to stop and they went right in front of your van?
No. I mean, I was driving, so I hear you guys saying, yeah, wild horses at 11 o'clock, but I can't look at 11 o'clock and look at the road. And so we came up on that ridge and we were stopping, and then suddenly these horses just run right in front of my van. And it was like surreal. Like you didn't feel that it was real. You felt like you were watching a movie or something. And of course, I was scrambling for my phone to take videos, but
Welcome to another episode of Stowe Nation, a production of Park Media. Before I introduce today's guest, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, share, and leave a 5-star review. And if you find this podcast useful in any way and want to pay us the ultimate compliment, head on over to our Patreon page where you can subscribe to be a Classic, Stealth, or Beast Mode subscriber. What's going on, Stowe Nation? Welcome back to another episode. On this episode, Graham Burtoft is a host, and he was able to get myself, Michelle Burtoft, Kim Buck, Stephen Mendivil, and Jeremy and Sara Sanchez together to talk about their thoughts on the Stowe Nation's New Year's Eve overlanding event. We talked about the planning process, the logistics, how people prepared for not only the below freezing temperatures, but also the equipment needed, and our favorite moments. And last but not least, we talked about the delicious food that we had served by Overland Lunchbox. So please sit back, relax, and enjoy today's episode.
First off, I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us. Welcome. This is the Stowe Nation New Year's Eve Overlanding Trip recap. The idea here is just kind of a general conversation, talk about what we all went through, what we experienced, what we enjoyed, what was kind of surprising, and, would we do it again? I'm the host this week. This is Graham Burtoft, for those of you who are watching the video. Along with me, I've also got Michelle and Younghwa, and then we got some new faces and new voices to the podcast. So going to let them each introduce themselves. So Kim, let's go ahead and start with you.
Sure. I'm Kim Buck, and I'm from Silverton, Colorado. I've got Moby, which is a 21 Stealth van.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us, Kim. Steve, how about yourself?
hi, Steve Mendivil. I'm from Santa Cruz, and I have just the classic mode, and I bought it off the showroom floor.
That's a rarity. Yeah. Congratulations on that.
A rarity.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's some people who are pretty jealous of that right now, Steve.
Back in the day.
Exactly. All right. And Jeremy and Sara.
All right, I'm Sara. This is Jeremy. We have Sanchez, 2021 Classic Mode.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Really looking forward to the conversation. But I'm going to put Younghwa in the hot seat first. So Younghwa, this was a pretty fun trip. It got kind of cold. But where did the idea come from? And then how did you go about arranging it, choosing the vendors, choosing the route, all that?
Yeah, so I initially put out a poll probably like a couple months before I started planning to figure out what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to do something with the community for New Year's Eve. And everyone basically picked overlanding. And I had mountain biking, I think came in second, and some other, like a wine tour and some other stuff. But the overwhelming response was the overlanding recovery type of course. So that's why I went ahead and did that. And it actually took me a while to find someone who was willing to guide us on New Year's Eve, because everyone wanted to celebrate it themselves. And so I must have gone through probably like 4 different people until I ran into Brian. And then he was like, yeah, sure. So I was like, okay, cool.
and he recognized
that's
kind of where you were trying to go, right? That it was going to be possibly weather dependent.
Yeah, so I knew I needed to keep it down in the Southwest just because of, the cold weather, which, didn't really matter anyways, I guess. But anyways, but the whole premise was to at least be in Nevada, Arizona, SoCal area. And luckily, Brian has done multiple overlanding tours, and so he was very familiar with that whole, I guess, Southwest corridor. And so he knew a lot of good spots to stop at as far as like, points of interest and things of that nature. So
was the trip kind of pre-planned, that the actual route, was that like pre-run by you or by any of the other vendors that we had?
So the route itself came from Brian's team. So he showed me the route, and I think we modified it just a little bit. And then eventually what ended up happening is that we found out that a snowstorm had passed through. And so the mountain corridor that we're going to start, because we were going to meet up in Austin, Nevada, and work our way south on the western side of the mountain corridor. And California had gotten hit by some pretty big snowstorms. And so basically he texted me and he was like, hey, everyone needs to bring snow chains. And I'm like, what? I was like, no, that's not happening. And so long story short, we had an option to go out to Mesquite, Nevada, which is just southwest of St. George, Utah. And but the problem with that is that instead of snow, we were looking at rain. And but it was going to be a little bit warmer, so that was the upside with that. So anyways, I took a look at both of the routes, and then I had to make a weather decision, and I chose the colder one, which in retrospect, at least I'm glad that I chose that one, because we would have literally been celebrating New Year's in mud and rain, and it was still cold. I mean, it was still in the 20s in Mesquite. I mean, I think we were like, what, -5 or something like that?
I think it hit something like that. Yeah, all the champagne froze in the snow.
Yeah, I mean, at least we didn't need to refrigerate it. But yeah, so that's basically how the route ended up getting modified in regards to our original plan. We actually met up in Tonopah, Nevada, which was about approximately 2-ish hours south of Austin. But yeah, I mean, I won't go into that. I don't know what other questions you want to ask. So.
That's okay. I mean, you kind of answered.
I don't want to recap everything.
Yeah, no, not at all. Not at all. So other than the weather, what other kind of prep did you have to do for yourself, and what other prep did the team do prior to the event?
Yeah, so prepping was, I guess if you kind of want to do it in phases, one is doing your research, right? Which includes like, what do people want to do? Where do you want to do it? And with whom do you want to do it with? And so Brian was well respected in the community. And so that's why I picked him. If it was someone else, and I was just like, I don't know. But, and so that's kind of like the planning phase. And then going over the routes and stuff like that. And then simultaneously, I had to announce, the event and try to, we had 20 slots. I think we filled 14, but 5 backed out last minute. So I had to take care of that. I had to find out people's food restrictions and pass that on to the cook. And I had to, once I figured out how many people were going to come, I bought a bunch of like decorations, New Year's Eve decorations, champagne bottles. I kind of went a little overboard, I think, with the decorations and champagne.
It's all right. It was kind of cool to see all the vans decorated for New Year's in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I just remember like making you guys take a bottle of champagne because I didn't want to drive with it back.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyways, but yeah, so there's kind of just that logistical challenge of making it all happen. And luckily, Brian was nice enough. I mailed all the decorations to Brian's house, and then he brought it out in his van. So that was really nice.
That's cool.
And then the other part was just making sure I communicated with everyone to let them know, like, hey, there's 2 choices and why, and like, what do you prefer? And, I had to listen. Well, I didn't have to be honest. I wanted to listen to everyone and get their input and see, how they felt. But yeah, I mean, and then, there's that financial part. I had to make sure everyone paid. I don't like being the bill collector.
No, not at all. Not at all.
But
oh, cool.
But yeah, so I would say that's basically kind of what it took to get it going.
All right. So Jeremy and Sara, what kind of prep work did you guys have to do before you came out? Where were you coming from, and did you have to do stuff along the way, or just before you got here?
We maybe did the most prep of anybody. We just picked up our van at the end of September, and we have been just putting miles on it like crazy since then. And we really didn't stop to add any upgrades until November. Yeah. And so in preparation for this trip, we knew we wanted to upgrade our suspension. So we got the rip kit installed. We got onboard air installed. We put the auxiliary fuel tank on so that we didn't have to carry loose cans. And what else do we do?
Did a spare tire carrier from Alvans.
Yeah, moved our spare tire carrier so that we could put the auxiliary fuel in. So we did quite a bit, like within a few weeks of the trip.
And the last minute project was Jeremy installing exterior lights on the roof rack like the day before we had to leave. So
yeah. Actually, and those actually proved to be pretty valuable. So I'm glad I did that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was literally, it cut into our drive time getting out there.
Yeah.
So we had to move a little.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Right.
None at all. And
I mean, and so we're from Denver, but we spent our Christmas with our family in Oklahoma. So we were coming from Oklahoma. So he was in his parents' driveway installing these lights on the roof.
Well, I mean, we were in Michelle's parents' farmhouse and installing some things just before we came out. So completely understand. Steve, what about you? What kind of prep work did you do before you headed out on this trip?
Boy, the only prep work was, I think, freaking out a little bit when I saw Young Wad's list of stuff that we were supposed to bring. We were supposed to have a spare tire on the back, and I don't have that. And she goes, well, okay, if you get into trouble, you can use mine. So the only thing I really needed to get was the diesel. So I had to get, and those little, I don't know what those little cans are called, but
the jerry cans?
No, well, it's the ones that are.
Oh, the Rotopacks?
Yeah, those are hard to find.
Right? You just don't go down to Walmart and find those things. So I had to order those and get those. And then I had ordered the Van Compass 4.3 suspension, gosh, probably back in October. Was hoping it would be installed, but no, still here it is, February. Still no 4.3 installed.
Yeah.
So
well, we'll keep our fingers crossed that you're able to get that here pretty soon. It is a pretty nice system. Kim, what about you? What kind of prep work did you do before you left?
Well, the whole extra fuel thing was a big deal for me. I spent so much time trying to figure out if I wanted the Rotopacks and how I was going to attach them. And at one point, Young Wa was like, you could just get jerry cans, which is what I ended up doing. I had 2 5-gallon jerry cans and 1 Rotopacks. But then it was like where to put them and how to install them. And I ended up putting them into, I have an aluminum box on the back. But that is not recommended because afterwards I spent some time trying to get the diesel smell out. So, but that seemed to be the big thing for me was I got fixated on the fuel to the point where I have since replaced my fuel tank with the 47-gallon one.
Oh, you got the big one?
I did. I think super happy.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. Well, kind of sticking with you, Kim, I think, have you been on overland trips before? Is that correct?
Yeah, let's see. Well, with you guys and Young Wa, we went to Grand Junction with Bill and the trip that Storyteller sponsored, and then I went to Flagstaff. You guys did too. To the Overland Expo this past late September. Yeah. So those are the only other 2 that I've been to. I actually live in a place where there are tons of overland trips, mostly Jeeps and things like that. And I've always seen them and been like, why would you drive all the way here just to be in a line of vehicles going over these mountain passes? It made no sense. But now I get the appeal of it, of learning from each other and being able to do things that you wouldn't otherwise want to do on your own.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Stephen or Jeremy and Sara, have either of you been on overlanding trips prior to this? And if so, was it kind of what you expected or a little different?
I'll go first. So I went on the Sedona trip, but that really wasn't an overlanding trip. That was just sort of a fun little off-road stuff. But I did do my first overlanding. I went to southern Utah with a friend of mine, and we went hiking the slot canyons, right? So there was a lot of off-road, for miles and miles. Didn't really know what I was doing. Got into a little bit of trouble, not with the 4x4, but I don't know if you guys have seen on Facebook, but my throttle pedal malfunctioned, right? And so I think that probably was caused by not airing down and driving so fast on these washboard roads for hours, right? And so my first experience was fun, but nerve-wracking, because then I had to figure out how to get my van to St. George to get it fixed, right? So you had to sort of limp around and get back to get it repaired, and finally got home. And so this trip in a convoy, boy, you felt so much more secure. I felt like I wasn't by myself. If something went wrong, I know that Young Wall had my back and that I had her spare tire. And so this was much more, and it was just fun traveling together and talking on those funky radios. And oh my gosh, I am a totally fan of overlanding now. Like, that's all I want to do, right? And now I watch all these YouTube videos for the overlanding, and I want to do it like as often as I can.
Absolutely. Jeremy, Sara, I don't know if you've been overlanding with a van, but have you been overlanding separate or not, or what? Did this kind of meet what you expected?
So, yeah, this was the first time with the van, but we have done quite a bit of overlanding in the past in various vehicles, Jeeps, in the Toyotas, and out in the desert, in the mountains, just kind of all over. So we've experienced it all out there. We've had broken axles, we've blown tires, we've had batteries explode. And we always joke that adventure begins when something goes wrong. So by those standards, this trip lived up to it with the weather, I guess. So that was fun. But yeah, it was a different thing in the van. We've traveled with groups before, so we're familiar with that dynamic, but it was definitely different with the vans, partially because we didn't really fully know what we were capable of in the van. It's a little, it's a different beast for sure. And it was actually our first time out in that part of Nevada, and we didn't really know what to expect terrain-wise, weather-wise. I had no idea we were going to have as much snow as we did. So that was, that was fun. That was kind of like a nice surprise, actually, because we enjoyed the snow quite a bit. But yeah, it was a new experience, but it definitely, we were able to draw on our previous experience overlanding.
Yeah.
And so, the trail communications, that we never had to actually do it, but, we felt pretty comfortable in a recovery situation. If we had to repair something, we were carrying a ton of tools. So yeah, I guess if anything, like, our previous experience definitely made us probably over prepare for what we ultimately needed on this trip, but that's a better position to be in than to not have what you need.
Yeah, absolutely.
And less nervous if something happened, because we've been through it before. Not with the van, but
Yeah, you already kind of knew how to react.
there was a part of me that was a little more nervous, in that there's a lot of things you can't repair on the trail in the van. And so in general, I think that makes me a little leery. it probably makes us more interested in these larger group overlanding trips because you have a little bit more support with you, right? Like if you went out by yourself or with just one or two other people and, van decides it doesn't want to come out of park or something, you definitely want some other people there to help you get that resolved.
Yeah, absolutely. So did the van kind of perform to your expectations, or were you surprised by the way it performed?
It did great. I mean, we didn't have any problems. We were pretty diligent in trying to keep our water from freezing up. And luckily we didn't have any problems there. Heater worked great. Thank goodness.
Yeah.
We were nice and toasty. And I don't think we really had any trouble.
Okay. No. Kim, what about you? Did the van kind of do what you expected it to do?
Yeah, I have to say, I did not have any van problems whatsoever on this trip. And I've owned mine for about a year, and, I have had some issues here and there on the Mercedes side. And at one point, my furnace quit working. I had a pump fail. It was actually a super easy fix, but I needed to get a new pump. It's not something you'd carry with you. So, I put a lot of miles on it for that trip, and I didn't have a single issue. So I'm happy about that.
That's great. That's great. Michelle, what about you? How were you impressed with the way? Sorry, go ahead, Jeremy.
We did have one minor issue on the way out there, in between outside of Flagstaff, on the highway. We took a big chunk of ice to the windshield, and it like right up behind the mirror where the tech cluster is up there. And by the end of the trip, that had spidered out. And so we had to get that replaced when we got home. But that wasn't a failing of the van. That was just a semi that passed in front of us too closely.
Yeah, we've been through the windshield replacement. Ours was from a overzealous tech down in Alabama. But Michelle, how did you feel about the performance of the van in the icy cold weather and snowy gravel roads?
I thought it performed pretty well. Now we were coming off of I think the entire round trip travel was about 6,000 miles. Our entire Christmas adventure. So we came from Seattle all the way to Ohio to visit family and friends in Illinois, and then back to down in Nevada. Wow. So we definitely had some cold weather beforehand. And it was, honestly, it's a good thing we had that experience, because we learned that you should definitely have windshield fluid that doesn't freeze up in freezing weather. That's a helpful piece to know. We also got to Ohio, and some of our clamps on the glycol fluid loop underneath the van had loosened up. So we had some drips and got those fixed before we got back out there. But then, once we got to the overlanding trip, we kind of worked those cold weather kinks out, I think, for the most part. And I'm always nervous. I think, like you said, Jeremy, there's a lot of pieces that you can't fix in the field. So I'm always nervous, especially when you hit those washboard roads, of what if a connection malfunctions, or this is not the right day for the sensor. And we didn't have any issues whatsoever. I think the only challenge we had is our upper lights. We have a beast, and the perimeter lights stopped working somewhere along those trips or along that trip. So we have to figure out where the wire short is, get those reconnected. But otherwise, like Kim said, we were toasty as can be. We did not use our onboard water, so we had a 5-gallon jug of water with us, so no problems there. And it was a great trip overall. So I was very impressed with it.
So, I'd echo everything that Michelle said. Obviously, we were in the same van. The only other little issue that we had was we had a aftermarket backup camera that was a rear-facing camera that was installed, and for whatever reason, it's quit. But, if that's the worst that happens after, a couple hundred miles off-road in those weather conditions, I have no complaints whatsoever.
My mark of success is, does it still go down the road? Can it get me out from where I am? And if the answer is yes, it's a good day. So
absolutely,
this trip is a success.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Michelle, kind of sticking with you, what were some of your kind of talk us through the days that we had, and what were some of your favorite sites and places that we stopped?
Oh goodness. Well, I'm going to say the first day hit it out of the park. So what happened is that we all met together the night before outside of Tonopah in an off-road area there, and I think we were the last ones to arrive at like 1 or 2 a.m. and it was very nice to pull up with all of the sleeping vans outside, and it was just a gorgeous night. The skies were clear, the stars were out. And then we started pretty early in the morning, and I'll say it was a really nice briefing that the Younghwa put on, that Brian shared with us, that kind of Cody gave us the heads up on what to expect, how to conduct yourselves on the trail, how to be considerate of, any kind of cattle gates that might be there, cattle guards that you're going through, how you should use the radios, kind of keep chatter to a minimum to make sure that there's plenty of time for folks to go through it. But then from there, we headed on out, and I'll highlight day one because that was the best point. And we started with a really nice travel, snow on and off. There was already snow on the ground by that point. And we went to a place called, I believe it's Diana's Punch Bowl is a name for it, but it's a volcanic cauldron of very hot water. I think it's 150 degrees. I don't know, what was it, a couple hours, 3 hours later. And it was a really nice hill climb. So we all got to engage our 4 low to start with, climb that hill up to the top of the Punch Bowl. And of course, by that time it was blowing pretty nice. It was about noontime. So time for lunch. We got to see the cauldron, and some brave soul had climbed down and put some plastic pink flamingos in the bottom of it. So if anyone sees the drone videos, there's some plastic pink flamingos there. Had a really terrific lunch. So that was our first experience with the great food from Lunchbox Overland. And then we headed out from there. And this is where I think we had a lot of fun. It started to snow a lot heavier. And before long, we hear across the radio, isn't this where we saw some wild horses when we came through last time? So, of course, everyone perks up their ears. And I think it probably wasn't 20 minutes later where we start to hear, oh, there's the wild horses. So we saw some behind us. And our van just happened to be, I think, right behind Steve's. And I was, luckily, because I was riding, I had my video camera on anyway, because I was taking in the scenery. And we come over a hill and I see all of the convoy stopped in front of us. And we were just amazed because this herd of wild horses, and I think there was probably 30 or 40, ran right in front of Steve's van. So I have this beautiful video of the wild horses in the snowy mountains running right in front of us, free as can be across the road. And that was probably my magic moment. It was just the beauty of nature and something we could not have planned for. And that was really still on day one, where we continue on. And then we got to, I think, to blizzard conditions about that time. And so it got pretty snowy and pretty dirty. So we got to test some more 4-wheel drive there. And this is where I really appreciate it. It was great to have a convoy, but also some guides that were experienced. And luckily, I don't think any of the vans got stuck, but we had our folks with us pulling out some other people along the roadway that got stuck. So it was kind of a nice recovery class that we didn't have to use our vehicles for the test bed. So that was the first day, and I think it was really a blast. So that was my highlight. I don't know if anyone else wants to speak of day 2, but I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and Steve, did you see the horses coming, or did you just happen to stop and they went right in front of your van?
No. I mean, I was driving, so I hear you guys saying, yeah, wild horses at 11 o'clock, but I can't look at 11 o'clock and look at the road. And so we came up on that ridge and we were stopping, and then suddenly these horses just run right in front of my van. And it was like surreal. Like you didn't feel that it was real. You felt like you were watching a movie or something. And of course, I was scrambling for my phone to take videos, but I mean, I told Younghwa right after that, said, that was it. You can't top that. That was worth the price of admission just to see those wild horses.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Kim or the Sanchez's, any thoughts on the first day? Any other highlights?
Well, just to tack on to something Michelle said about how none of the vans got stuck, but some of our Photo One and Cody at a couple of points in time. They both got stuck and had to recover each other. I think the vans were so heavy that we were not slipping and sliding as nearly as much as the smaller vehicles with us.
Yeah,
yeah, that was a surprise that in some ways the weight at the speeds we were traveling, which was not incredibly fast, was a little bit of an asset. We definitely stuck to the road a little better because multiple times on the radio they were mentioning, oh, it's really slick up here, we're really sliding, and we didn't experience any of that. Yeah,
I recall that because Michelle and I looked at each other and went, it's not slippery at all for us. I remember Cody at one point was like, weren't you guys sliding around? And no, we weren't. Yeah.
Hey, Graham, I can't believe I can't believe you guys are acting like that hill that we had to climb for lunch was like no big deal. I was completely freaked out. Completely. And we had to air down, and I was thinking, okay, you guys made it barely, because I have videos I can see wheels are spinning, people are rocking, and then I was one of the last ones to go, and luckily we had to air down because it got even more treacherous. The more vans that went up that path, it made it more difficult. But I thought Cody was crazy to take us up there, and I'm like, oh my gosh! And this is on day one, so I thought that was another sort of crazy moment as well.
Well, Young Wah got maybe the best photo from that one wheel up in the air going up.
Yeah.
Yeah. A good one. I was kind of scared going up that thing. I thought I was going to crest and then fall into the spring.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of space up top.
Yeah, that was the only part of it that I found scary, was not knowing what we were getting into when we got up to the top. How much space there was going to be to pull off, how off camber we'd be up there. I mean, we've done things where we've climbed hills much steeper than that in a less tall vehicle.
Yeah.
So that part wasn't as uncomfortable as not knowing, okay, when I get to because Cody was guiding us up the hill, kind of giving us some directions, spotting us, but there was no one at the top saying, okay, when you get up here,
go this way.
You need to go right. You need to go, so that part was a little hairy, but it was well worth it because the views once we were up there were just incredible.
Yeah, and then once we were up there, we got to have that first meal from Lunchbox Overland, which was just delicious. So, Younghwa, how did you find Lunchbox Overland? And then what was your kind of favorite meal that they made for us?
Well, Lunchbox came with Brian, so and this goes back to the planning phase. I did my homework with who I chose to guide us, but I heard from many people that have been on his other tours that he does that the food is just phenomenal, and I was like, well, I know when we're freezing outside and we have good food, it's a little bit better. In regards to morale and stuff like that. But anyways, I would say my favorite meal is probably the short ribs. I think that was the first night. And they had the little crunchy onions, I think, or something. Or maybe that was a different meal. I don't know. But the short ribs, I thought he had sous vide them, but he didn't. He just, I forget how he braised them,
I think so.
I think is what he said.
Braised.
But it was... Yeah, but I mean, every single meal though is really good. Really
absolutely,
good.
Absolutely.
So.
Kim, what was your favorite meal from Lunchbox? That's a fair answer.
Yeah, no, the fact that he had to cook in the kind of conditions that we had, it was either blowing really hard, it was always cold, really cold out, and I thought he did a great job.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve, what was yours?
So I had one of the special meal, right? So my preference was not any red meat, right? But when he brought out the short ribs, I said, well, I'll make an exception for short ribs. They were fantastic. And because there was so much food left over, I got a whole bunch. I was eating short ribs for the next week on the way home. It was awesome.
That's fantastic. Michelle?
Ooh, well, I will say the short ribs were fantastic, but to give another option, there was a lunch, I think it was on day 2, that was penne pasta. So it was pasta with arugula, and some pesto and tomatoes, as I recall. And I don't know if it was feta cheese or mozzarella, but it was absolutely fantastic. And I loved it so much. I tried to recreate it at home, and it did not turn out nearly as good. But it was really amazing. And I was just so impressed that here's fresh pasta and lettuce and tomatoes on day 2. And it's just like, it just came out of the grocery store, and it was absolutely fantastic. So, that was the meal. I wish I had the recipe so I could do the same thing, because my attempt at replication didn't turn out so well.
Yeah, that was the one that we took extras with us. Jeremy, Sarah, what about you guys? What was your favorite meal?
Well, I just have to say I'm not very food adventurous normally, and I have always thought my entire life I just don't like curry, and so I just stay away from it. Mm-hmm. But night 2 was a yellow chicken curry with basmati rice, and that was maybe my favorite meal. It was excellent.
Yeah, I would
say that the meals were very well not timed. Mm-hmm. We certainly could have eaten the New Year's Eve meal a little earlier.
Yeah,
but they were all scheduled really well. They were the right meal for the right point mm-hmm. in the trip, I thought. And so I kind of identify with everybody's favorite. Michelle, I think maybe my favorite was that lunch, because it was something they could set up quick and easy, and we got to enjoy the scenery out there. Yeah. We weren't freezing cold standing around waiting on it. And we took extras of that too. It was really great. And that was kind of a lifesaver the next day, because we spent a little more time getting back to Las Vegas than we expected. And so we were like eating that on the road. Mm-hmm. So that was nice. One thing I will say is, that they were incredibly accommodating of everybody's special food requests. But in particular, I am really allergic to a very specific subset of foods, legumes. Mm-hmm. I can't have peanuts. I can't have peas. I can't have lentils. And if their menu ran up against that, they made something special for me. And I kind of threw them a wild card the night they did the short rib. I forgot to tell them about my pea allergy. Mm-hmm. And I heard him, they were doing a little bit to camera with the photo guys. And I heard Steven say, "Oh yeah, and there's peas in here." And I was like, "Oh." And as soon as they were done recording that, I mentioned to him, like, "I'm so sorry. I didn't mention that I'm allergic to peas, but I won't have the risotto. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I won't have the risotto." And he was like, no, I want you to have a good experience. We'll just make you some with just mushrooms. And at this point, I mean, you guys know that night, that was a challenging night for them to get set up and cook, probably the most elaborate meal. And I felt so terrible that he was going above and beyond, but he just went over to the cooler, pulled out some mushrooms, like sauteed, a totally separate thing for me. And, their commitment to making sure everybody has a great experience is pretty incredible. So I have to acknowledge that. That was really something special.
They were pretty fantastic, especially considering they stayed with us even after getting frozen out that night. It was for those who weren't there, that trip, I think it got down to about 5 or 6 degrees that night.
Below zero.
Lunchboxes. Yeah, 5 or 6 below, exactly.
Yeah, -5.
And Lunchbox's heater actually broke. But that was kind of the cool thing, right? Was that then we came together as a community, and Kim and Steve, you guys were both nice enough to actually share your vans with the Lunchbox people, which was really cool.
Yeah.
So,
mm-hmm.
Well, thanks to the storyteller setup, right, that allowed us to have multiple beds, and we could accommodate a family in our van.
Absolutely.
Awesome. I got to tell you, one of the best things, though, was waking up in the morning, opening up your van door, and you smell bacon. That's the best.
Yes,
oh my gosh.
Absolutely. So
I think Young Wa touched on something really important, that whatever discomfort we had was kind of the salve for that was that the food was so incredible. And it does do a lot for morale.
Yeah.
So, something to think about, people that are organizing trips like this, because, the other trips that we've been on, we've never had anyone preparing food. It was all on us individually. And there's something to be said for, it's a nice luxury to have, because you don't think about it. And it's just kind of, in a weird way, kind of the reward for pushing through whatever it is that you've done that day.
Yeah. I know for us, we kind of felt like it was a little, we've all got these wonderful vans where you can cook inside them, right? And poor lunchboxes out there freezing, but man, they made good food, and it was absolutely worth it. So, Steve, kind of a question for you. We already touched on it. You had such an epic view of the horses coming across. But what else kind of surprised you on the trip? Was there any other anything else that was unexpected or that was kind of your most enjoyed moment from the trip?
Well, certainly the horses. I would say that day one, and then getting up that hill was pretty much a highlight. Then, after that, then the snow started coming, right? And the wind started coming. And then the whole trip, we had to readjust, right? Luckily, Young Wah had a good navigator, and he did an assessment and says, okay, we've got to change course. We've got to find a new spot to camp. And that was part of the reason why we didn't get to camp till, late that night, because he had to go scouting out new places that would accommodate all of our vans that didn't have 2 or 3 feet of snow, because we weren't about to sort of dig out to get in there. So there just was, every day was like a new adventure, right? And a new problem to be solved. And the team all came together. Cody sort of led us. We learned some stuff. And it just was, it was fantastic.
Absolutely. Kim, what were some of your favorite memories from the trip?
For me,
or, I guess unexpected moments.
Unexpectedly, I have thought in the past of going on a girls' trip or trip with friends, and kind of deep down, I'm like, I don't know if I want to share my van with other people. But when the lunchbox crew got frozen out and needed shelter that night, it turns out that sharing my van was really easy and not awkward, and it actually didn't feel cramped. I was so surprised, because I had 2 people and 2 dogs plus me. Yeah.
You're the dogs.
And it was no big deal. I think they slept better than I did, but because I was like, oh man, I should have cleaned up something or done this or that. But I really like that. They were wonderful, and I'm glad I had that experience, because I think I'm much more likely to go on a trip with friends or do some different things. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
It was just kind of magic. I think it was, it was the adaptation that we had to go through, right? We knew there were going to be some changes in plans when we started because of the weather situation. So, we had this perfect agenda planned from Young Wah, and then we had to adapt. And so we're like, we don't know what's going to happen, and it's going to be brutally cold. So bring your Carhartts. And then, we adjusted on the fly, and, everyone stepped up. And I think that's the joy that I found in these is it's not just the adventure you go on, but it's the people you meet, because we had individuals from all ages, coming through from throughout the country. But it's also, how did we adapt, right? Kim had some extra house guests, as Steve did. Where did you pitch in? What kind of different travels did you take? And I think it's that adaptability of, not knowing what's around the next corner or what's coming at you next that I really enjoyed. And I think almost that added to the trip as opposed to took away, because we didn't know what to expect. We all wanted to be on an adventure, and I feel like that's exactly what we got and had a good time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you have to be adaptable and you're out by yourself, there's so much anxiety involved. But when you're with a group of people, it just puts your mind at ease. Yes, things can go wrong, but we as a group can handle anything. So
yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, and I'll say from the organizer's standpoint is that I was just super impressed by everyone's flexibility and positive attitude with everything, like with the weather, with, you know, pushing their vans, you know, with especially the weather, but also, you know, helping, Lunchbox family out. So, but I mean, I remember seeing him that Saturday morning, and they just looked like crap. Like, I was just like, oh my God. Like, and I asked him, I was like, are you freezing? Did you get any sleep? And they're like, no, we froze all night long. And they got like maybe like 2 hours sleep tops. And I was like, oh. And so for the morning huddle, you know, I put out in the meeting, I was like, hey, is anyone willing to, you know, let these guys sleep in their vans? And everyone was like more than happy to. And so I think that just kind of speaks to the community in itself. But you guys, I love hearing about all this stuff in regards to, you know, just being flexible when things don't go your way. And I think, you know, I don't want to take over the show. Sorry.
You're
Graham,
fine,
but,
young law.
I just think that was, to me, the most amazing thing, to watch everyone, you know, just have a positive attitude, enjoy each other's company, and have some good experiences. So
yeah,
I have thought a lot about that since the trip, because we've been on other trips with different, you know, all different people over the years. And, you know, some of those trips, when things start to go wrong or we have to adjust, you know, deviate from the plan, some people get crabby. Some people don't, you know, and I think part of that was maybe the luck of the group that we had, because only the people that were really committed to showing up despite the weather are the people that were there. But I also think it's baked into the storyteller community. The like-minded people that buy these vans are philosophies on travel and on recreation, a little more easygoing, laid back, you know, go with the flow. And so it was kind of the perfect storm, if you will, of the people we had on that trip and just the pool of people we were drawing from to begin with. Just really being very understanding and easygoing.
Yeah,
I think it also brought
echo all of
some
that.
teachable moments that we didn't expect too. You know, I think Cody was out there doing the best he could to explain survival to us, because I believe that, I don't know if it was that 5 below night, he tried to go without a heater, right? And he's, you know, teaching us about, you know, closing off, make the smallest space you can, how do you stay warm? And he was testing it, not just for himself, but to teach others. But then he brings that up the next morning. And so it's a lot of those teachable moments that I think, at least I personally didn't expect, but it was really nice to hear from experts, you know, who've been in these situations, or, you know, what would you do if, how do you plan for this? That was super, super helpful. And, you know, how do you find safe places to go, right? Always travel in groups, especially when you're going, you know, off-roading, or a place, you know, like where we were at, where, you know, you may not see another car for hours at a time. And frankly, some of the vehicles we pulled out, it's really a good thing that we were there, because there's no telling, you know, when the next vehicle through might have come.
Yeah,
you talk about Cody like testing out his plan or whatever. I talked to him the next morning, and he was saying he didn't get out from his car or his sleeping bag until, you know, his heater had broken and his car wasn't starting right away. And so he said, I'm not going to get outside my vehicle, because if I get outside my vehicle, I don't have a way to warm back up right now. And I looked around at the 9 or 10 other vans out there, and I said, you absolutely did have a way to warm back up. And he said, well, but I'm not by myself.
Did any of you happen to see his Instagram story that next morning?
It was a good one.
Michelle, you saw it. It was good. He shot a little video of himself all cocooned in with improvised blanket walls all around him. And, you know, he was just, he saw that was a teachable moment and posted it to his story. And just the visual of it was really hilarious, because, I mean, he was really snuggled in.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty funny.
Yeah, I thought Cody was you know, I thought the whole support crew was really, really good on this trip. Cody was a great teacher. Obviously, Lunchbox was great. but I also thought it was really cool that we had the team there that Agile had brought in for pictures and whatnot. And they did a fantastic job, obviously, with the video that they put out and everything. But I guess kind of one question maybe for Young was, was that part of your initial planning, or did that happen afterwards? How did you manage to get hooked up with those guys?
Yeah, so when I first started talking with Brian, he brought up like, hey, sometimes we have a photographer come out and take pictures and whatnot. And I was like, yeah, that'd be really cool. Cause, you know, as far as like having a professional photographer or I can't talk, videographer, you know, that would just cost more for everyone. Yeah. And for being the very first, you know, overlanding trip that I hosted, I didn't want to tack that price on to everyone. So I decided not to do it. But instead, I still wanted it. So instead, I was like, well, maybe I can get a sponsor to pay for it. And so I went around, and it just so happened that right after Baja, I went to Agile to get the steel braided line upgrade for the air compressor. Mm-hmm. And I talked to John, one of the owners, and I was like, yeah, you know, I want to do this, that, and the other, blah, blah, but you know, I just, you know, I guess for lack of better terms, I just straight up asked him. I was like, hey, will you flip the bill for this one? And at first he was like, no. And I was like, okay. But then he came back and he's like, well, I can do everything in-house. We have one of the guys that work at Agile. He was a photographer, and then he was going to bring actually Matt, mm-hmm. who was the main photographer, as a second shooter. And so he's like, yeah, we'll just send them out there. They can do their thing. And then, you know, we'll take care of the pictures and we'll edit the videos and we'll do everything in-house. And I was like, oh, okay, awesome. So that was something that I did definitely want to do. But, you know, thanks to Agile, they kind of came in and saved the day, because I think that video, what I really wanted was something memorable, because it's one thing to go out and do all that. And it's like, okay, yeah, all this great stuff happened. But then to be able to sit back, you know, I don't know, maybe 5, 10, 15 years from now and look at that video and be like, oh, yeah, he did that. And so I wanted to give a little keepsake, I guess, of the trip. So,
yeah.
But yeah, that was definitely something on the radar. And luckily, you know, John and Agile came through, and they also came through with some pretty sweet swag too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Anyways,
I've got my Agile hat sitting over here, and I know Michelle's wearing her shirt. So yeah, it was a good time. Good time. So, I guess kind of,
Graham?
Yeah.
Something I wanted to say about the photographers,
yeah,
is, you know, all the trips we've ever gone on, it's just been from one moment to the next thinking about, oh, we got to capture this. You know, and it was so nice to not feel like we had to do that, mm-hmm. that to know that we were going to have a record of what we had done without us having to constantly be thinking about photo opportunities.
Yeah.
And so Younghwa, I have to like credit you for, you know, thinking about that aspect of it, because I think it made the whole trip more enjoyable, that we weren't experiencing it all through our, you know, device screens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing though too is that they were really good about not making the trip about us getting the picture that they wanted. You know, like we could do everything that we wanted, and they just happened to be there in the background getting the shot. And I thought that was really, really well managed by them, by Cody and by Younghwa. Just the way that was all managed, I thought was really nice. So yeah, and if you haven't seen it, Younghwa, can we put the link to the video maybe in the comments or something?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll put it in the show notes for sure.
That would be cool. So I guess kind of circling up here a little bit, we all kind of overpacked, probably. Some of us maybe underpacked. So kind of Jeremy and Sara, starting with you guys, what were some of the things that you wish you had brought? And what were some of the things that you went, you know, we probably didn't need to bring?
Well, Jeremy, was diligent about bringing some off-road recovery gear, like purchasing it specifically for this trip. And, thank goodness we didn't need it, but that was taking up quite a bit of space in the garage. So
yeah, we had plenty of recovery gear from our previous vehicles, but it's a different thing to have recovery gear for a 10,000 pound vehicle. So we had kind of scrambled at the last minute to get a higher rated recovery rope and some shackles, because as everyone knows, like the classic, out of the box does not have any real recovery points on it. So I wouldn't say I regret bringing any of that, because that's just good safety gear. I think we ultimately as a group had more firewood than we needed. We definitely were like giving it away on the last morning. But
I think that's because we started so late.
Yeah, I agree.
The first night.
And that's a good problem to have. Like, you don't want to be short on firewood, especially in the temperature. We would have all just been in our vans, not being social. So, I don't know. I guess I will say I wish I had brought some waterproof pants, because doing all the fire making the 2 nights, I spent more time out in the snow, tending to the fire, chopping logs, stuff like that. And it would have been nice if my pants had not gotten soaked through, but it was so cold it never melted. So it wasn't like I had wet pants till I got back in the van.
Exactly.
But I think that'd be almost the only thing I would change. We had really dialed in our gear that we were carrying from our previous trips that we had just recently taken. So we were we weren't terribly overpacked, I guess.
No, I guess the only note is the container I have for our little Chihuahua's dog food, Kevin. I filled it up before we left, but because this was by far the longest we've ever been away from home, it was like 2.5 weeks, including Christmas and this trip and getting back home. Like, we ran out and had to go buy more dog food, but Kevin would not have had that any other way.
See him repositioning on cue back there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I would have brought: some lighter fluid, because trying to get a fire started at -5 degrees, I had no idea how hard that is. And if we just had some lighter fluid or gas, boom, we would have had instant fires going. And
Cody really came in. Yeah, Cody came in clutch that first night with the flare. We were trying everything to get that first one lit because it was so cold. We were using Steve's fire starters, and those weren't taking. And we tried 3 different lighters, a torch, nothing would light. And
like the butanes weren't working.
Cody came in with that flare and just threw it in the fire, and then it was off to the races after that.
Absolutely.
Well, also, Steve, I'll say you brought. We had one too, a hatchet. Everybody should carry a hatchet if you're going to be out in the backcountry. But something funny, Steve's hatchet ended up being a little bit of a casualty. Yeah, we found the axe head in the fire the last morning.
I didn't know that.
Handle, there was no evidence there was ever.
The handle was burned.
So I picked it up and I took it over to Steve and I said, I think this was your hatchet. Here's what's left of it.
Right. Now it's just a wedge.
Steve, did you replace that yet? Oh, good.
I did, of course.
Did you lose a shovel? Is that right, Steve? Or did we ever find that?
I did. I probably, when we were packing, I probably left it outside the van. I haven't bought one of those yet. I figure I'd wait maybe until next time I go winter camping before I replace that. But no, I saw a lot of stuff from you guys, things that I needed to add to my repertoire. And so I've been slowly doing that since our trip. So I guess you have to think every trip you go on is going to cost you a little extra, right? By the mods that you see everybody else
count on that.
Yeah, every time you see another van, it's just like, ooh, I need that. Kim, what about yourself? Was there anything that you wish you would have brought?
Oh my gosh, I brought way too much stuff.
Another set of skis?
I
Another
almost
bike?
thought,
Kim was the only one with skis, and you put them to use.
I'm usually one of these people who I like everything exactly in its place, and I've gotten things super organized. And this trip, I realized, oh my gosh, I've got to leave today because the mountain passes I've got to go over. I had a little window of opportunity. So I just like threw stuff in there. I had a bike on the back of my van, a fat tire snow bike, that the last minute I took it off because I didn't really like the way it was hanging off of there. But yeah, this time I traveled with an e-bike inside the van. I had that ski box on the back with my cross-country skis because I couldn't really take the ski box off in time. I didn't need that. But for some reason in my craziness, I brought 4 electric, like ceramic space heaters, which nobody needs that. But I did let other people know that I had extra. And I also...
It worked out, right?
You were like a magician. It was like, what's she going to pull out of her van next? Skis,
What I
bikes,
didn't tell y'all is I had
heaters,
a ton
Mary
of
Poppins
food,
bag.
and of course I
Crazy.
didn't need to eat any of it the whole time. And so yeah, I brought back like tons of groceries that I had bought before the trip. So
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Michelle, what did we load in the van that we didn't need?
Well, we
And a sewing machine doesn't
no, that
count.
counts.
okay. I was going to say we had an antique sewing machine from the family that we were supposed to deliver to someone else. So as you all know, those are pretty heavy. But yeah, I think Kim hit it on the nose. Definitely plenty of food. And we were coming off of a long trip, but there's no need to have the refrigerator fully packed, especially when lunchbox is cooking for you. I think I go to Steve's comment of how expensive is this going to be after the trip? So in a couple weeks, even though we traveled with jerry cans, we've got the new fuel tank that's going to be installed and some new big brakes. So it's going to be an expensive February for us, but those are the additions, especially after we did the mountain passes and also needed some extra fuel on this trip. So those are the pieces I think wish we would have had with us, although it didn't stop us by any means, but just some more toys for the beast.
Oh, and if I could say
Awesome.
just one thing that is costing me more money after the trip is, well, it actually was quite cheap. I had an extra, the furnace heater vent go back to the water cabinet. And it turns out it didn't really work if it was hooked up to a vent. I had a vent put in next to the water cabinet hatch. But if you unhook it from that and just let the hot air blow into the hot water cabinet, that works super well. So the larger fuel tank cost me the big bucks.
Okay. Yeah, but it's worth it to not have to deal with the jerry cans, I'm sure. So all right.
It's so nice having that extra range, and also because we have the quarter tank cutoff on the heaters. It's nice to not have to worry about running afoul of that.
Yeah. I'm sure all of us have done the. I'm so close to stopping, but I'm also so close to not having enough. I have to go to the next gas station just to make sure I got enough to stay warm that night. Well, we're getting kind of close here on time, so I think what I'd like to do is kind of go around real quick, just kind of a final memory from each of you. Start with Steve. What was the one thing you're going to take away from the trip?
Just the sense of adventure, and then I guess the confidence that we can do this even if it's -5 degrees. These vans performed wonderfully. If anything, I felt sorry for the other people that didn't have vans. Like they were sleeping in those tents on top of their cars. They were struggling, right? Because it was so cold. The van performed like fantastic. So I took away, this is a very capable van, and it can even handle -5. And don't let the winter be an
Jeremy and Sara?
Sara?
Well, I'm going to say that the friends that we made, I was looking forward to this trip in advance, and then the days leading up, and I knew how cold it was going to be, and I'm like, oh, do we really want to still go? But I'm so glad that we did. It was so fun. Yes, it was cold, but that was hardly even an issue. And, now I feel like we're part of this really great family.
Yeah, I would echo that. The community, the really getting to tap into that for the first time on this trip, that was pretty cool. I would also say, I would echo what Steve said, just the sense of adventure. You know, there were the big highlights, the horses, the, hill climb. But, one of my favorite moments was actually one of the slower moments when we were just sitting out there on Antelope Valley Road with the snow coming down all around us, all of our lights on, and, just kind of deciding what we were going to do. But all of us comfortable in our vans, knowing we were in capable rigs, that, we weren't going to get stuck out there. Like, that memory really is bright in my mind. I don't know why. It was just a different experience. Mm-hmm. It's not something you do every day. And I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. Kim, how about yourself?
Oh gosh, I came so very, very close to not going on the trip. And of course, I'm super happy I did. And it's what all of y'all have said. It's that, are you up for this adventure? Well, yes. Are you up for meeting some new people and hanging out? I mean, there's the hanging out part, but I definitely learned from all of you. So, yeah.
All right. Michelle, your thoughts?
Oh goodness, it's all of the above. It was fantastic, and I think the last day we closed it out at Lunar Crater in Nevada, which is yet another kind of mountain volcanic area in the state, and it's this giant depression in the ground, and you see all of these vans and other individuals that just, it's the first of the year. They choose to spend their time together and laugh and enjoy, and the beautiful scenery. And these are places that I would never probably go on my own. And it's just happened to be along the route and part of the adventure. And to me, that's just magic. That's what it's all about. And then it's everyone standing around, for a while afterwards. They're not in any hurry to go back home. It's just, laughing and chatting. And it's, what are we going to do next? When are we getting together? And I think, like everyone said, a lot of us were like, oh, are we sure we want to do this? And then it's always that last day. It seems like when we do it, that we are all so glad that we have that adventure and learn so many new things and find out that, we have so much in common for being so different. So I think it's kind of that magic to me of the grand adventure.
Okay. So
you reminded me of something else that was a pretty cool memory, and that is, for all of the drama of what happened New Year's Eve, having to pivot and having to scout a new location, New Year's Day, waking up to that view, because we had no idea what we had driven into the night before. It was pitch black. Mm-hmm. Waking up to that view, finding out we were camped on the Pony Express Trail. I mean, you could literally look miles down the trail, just surrounded by the mountains. The skies were clear. Like, that was such a nice surprise. And that's the kind of thing that can only happen when you have to deviate from your plan. Mm-hmm. So,
yep, absolutely. So, Younghwa, what's next for Stone Nation Adventures?
Well, I'm starting to, other than the Bentonville, the first, anniversary of Stone Nation, other than that one, the next one will be the fly fishing trip. I got a lot of rave reviews, and of course I love fly fishing, so I'm going to make sure that happens. So that'll be probably end of September. And then looking forward, I think I'm going to team up with the Jensens and try to do a local wine tour and have us camp out on a wine farm and an alpaca farm and stuff like that. And there happens to be a 1-star Michelin restaurant in Los Alamos, so that might be in the near future for a meetup. But, I have all kinds of crazy, ideas, so we'll see what happens. And,
Absolutely.
But at least for right now, it's the Bentonville and then the fly fishing in September. I may throw one in between March and September.
Sign us up for all of it.
Right? Definitely.
Well, I'm glad you guys had a good time.
Yeah. Well, we can't close out the Stone Nation podcast without asking Younghwa's favorite question. So, especially for the newbies. So, Kim, I'm going to start with you. what does it mean to be part of the Stowe Nation community?
It means, oh gosh, why didn't I have a preset answer? It means
Nobody does.
Part of this tribe. It means that when you do have issues, you've got people who can help, who are willing and happy to help you out and help troubleshoot. And it means a group of people we can go on adventures with.
Steve, what does it mean to you to be part of it?
Yeah, it means having a tribe that you got to have your checkbook ready, because we're always going to find some new mods or some new improvements that you realize you can't live without.
Or
so,
hidden.
Just keep your checkbook.
Right.
That's what it means for you to be part of the Stowe Nation community.
It just keeps costing.
Keep your checkbook out. That's probably the most realistic answer that anyone's ever said.
Right. It's costing way more than just the cost of the van to be part of the Stowe Nation, right? There's always something more that I need that I didn't realize I needed until I met you guys, and now I need.
All right, Jeremy and Sara, what does it mean to you guys to be part of the Stowe Nation community?
Well, I'm going to piggyback on Kim and kind of the general theme of this whole podcast, and that's the community, the family aspect. Coming off of other overlander groups, off-roading groups that we've been a part of in the past, those groups were more about ego and how far can we push our rigs, and how big and bad and how much money can I spend, and can I spend more than you, and that's not what this group is about. Even after this trip was over, we got to meet a few more people with vans who weren't able to make it on the trip, and they were so generous with their time and resources with us as well. So it was really nice.
Yeah. I would largely say the same thing. I mean, it's just an incredible community of people that are very diverse, but still incredibly like-minded. And that's kind of rare to find. You can seek it out, in the world we live in. You can find your little group online, but to find it in real life, it's amazing how serendipitously everybody just jives.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't have had a more diverse group of people, and yet, everybody kind of had the same easygoing nature, and conversations were easy, meeting up with people you've known your whole life. Mm-hmm. So that has been our experience through every aspect of owning a storyteller and being part of this community.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good way to end it. Before we completely close, I do want to extend a huge thank you and a shout out to everyone who supported us on this trip and who was able to make it. Brian Lau from Sprinter Overland, Cody over at Expedition America, our fantastic guide, Chef and family over at Lunchbox Overland, Agile for sponsoring and for helping us get those fantastic pictures and video, and of course Youngwa for setting the whole darn thing up. We wouldn't have the podcast, we wouldn't have had these memories if it wasn't for Youngwa. So thank you so much. Thank you to everyone here for joining us for the podcast. Really appreciate it. To steal Youngwa's line and hack it up a little bit, I look forward to sharing a gravelly, snowy road with you in the future. So thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it.
Stowe Nation is a production of Park Media. The executive producer is Youngwa Kim. The audio engineer is
Stephen Grasso.
The marketing director is
Guillaume Golsong.
The original music and artists is done by
Jason Walsmith.
The sound designer is
Lorenzo Interiano.
And the webmaster is
Peng Shi.
Without any of these people, this podcast couldn't happen, so a big, huge thank you. And a big, huge thank you to you, the listener. If you like this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a 5-star review. This is Youngwa with Stowe Nation, and I can't wait to share the road with you.